In the harsh landscape of mid-18th century Ireland, the lives of the peasantry were defined by a desperate dependence on the land. For a small tenant farmer, an eviction was not just an inconvenience. It was a fatal event that could plunge a family into starvation and utter destitution. This desperation was the soil from which a unique and violent form of resistance grew, known as the Whiteboy movement. This was not random lawlessness, but a highly organized, secret society that emerged as a direct response to a dramatic shift in the Irish economy. Following the 7 Years' War, the price of pastoral goods like beef and wool soared, making grazing livestock far more profitable than the subsistence crop, farming upon which the poor relied. Landlords seeking to capitalize began a widespread campaign of land consolidation. This involved the controversial enclosure of common lands, where communities had long held rights for free grazing and collecting fuel. By fencing off these commons with ditches and fences, landlords privatized a crucial communal survival mechanism. The Whiteboys, who were first called levelers for their nocturnal activity of tearing down these very ditches, rapidly evolved into general redressers of all rural grievances. They functioned as a shadow government, enforcing their own unwritten agrarian law. They punished those who imposed rack rents, hired farms over the heads of sitting tenants, or, in a clear sign their motives were economic rather than sectarian, their own Catholic clergy for collecting excessive priests' dues. Their power was built on a terrifying repertoire of psychological warfare, which included brutal, ritualistic punishments designed to ensure compliance and spread fear. The conflict that erupted in Ballyragget, County Kilkenny, in 1775 is of singular historical importance because it shatters the simple narrative of a sectarian war between the oppressed Catholic Irish and the ruling Protestant ascendancy. Instead, it was a violent class war fought within the Catholic community itself. The conflict centered on the powerful Butler family, who were substantial Catholic landlords, not Protestant planters. The local landlord, Robert Butler, had incurred the wrath of the Whiteboys by attempting to enclose local common land. His opposition was so vehement and initially so unsuccessful that he was ultimately forced to flee to England for his own safety. In his absence, his even more powerful brother, Dr. James Butler, the influential Catholic Archbishop of Cashel, took charge. Demonstrating that his loyalty to his aristocratic class and family property was paramount, the Archbishop organized an armed association of Catholics to defend his family's interests. He denounced the Whiteboys for their assault on a town belonging to a butler. This plan was executed on the ground by the parish priest of Ballyragget, Father Alexander Sandy Cahill, who took command of this new anti-Whiteboy league. His decision created a permanent and bitter schism with his own parishioners, by whom he was so much detested. The Protestant-run state, represented by a local magistrate, Captain Christopher Hewitson, then entered the alliance. Hewitson provided crucial government aid, directly arming the Catholic League with muskets and ammunition and putting them through a course of military training. This fusion of Catholic gentry and Protestant state power was sealed in a remarkable and deeply symbolic public ceremony inside the new Catholic chapel, where Father Cahill led his parishioners in taking a formal oath against the Whiteboys, an oath that was administered by the Protestant magistrate, Hewitson. This was a calculated performance of loyalty, proving that propertied Catholics could be as loyal to the British Crown as any Protestant. Once formed and trained, this anti-Whiteboy League was not a passive, defensive body. Its members, eager for action, actively sought to disrupt the Whiteboy network through pursuit, espionage, and relentless harassment. This campaign raised tensions to a breaking point and led to an initial, preliminary confrontation. There are conflicting accounts regarding the date of this first clash. One theory, supported by multiple local histories, and later scholarly syntheses, states that a first confrontation occurred on or about February 8th, 1775, in which the Whiteboys were driven off and suffered an ignominious rout. However, this date conflicts directly with a contemporary 18th century primary source, the Annual Register for 1775, which records the first effective resistance to the Whiteboys as having taken place on January 21st, 1775. This discrepancy represents a classic historiographical conflict between later local folk memory and a dated contemporary print record. Regardless of the precise date, the outcome of this first engagement is consistent across all accounts. The Whiteboys were decisively defeated. Their pride dented by this shameful defeat, they swore that they would regroup and return to wreak vengeance on the town of Ballyragget and burn it to the ground. The Whiteboys made good on their vow. On the night of February 21st, 1775, a formidable Whiteboy force, the largest ever assembled in Kilkenny, gathered at the fair green of Rathbeg. Consistent figures suggest an army of around 300 horsemen and 200 foot soldiers, a regional force drawn from surrounding areas. It was a ritualistic and intimidating spectacle, with the men dressed in their signature white costumes, marching under a white banner, and carrying lighted torches that made their threat to burn the town literal. In the pre-dawn hours of February 22nd, this army of 500 men approached Ballyragget, crossed the Nore Bridge, fired shots into the air, and challenged the inhabitants. Their target was Butler House, where the principal members of the Anti-Whiteboy League had barricaded themselves for defense. Inside Butler House, a small but determined group of only about 14 or 15 armed men, led by Father Cahill, waited. The Whiteboy captain, a man named Moore from Clara, confidently strode forward in front of the house, called the defenders a pack of cowards, and dared them to come out and fight. After being met with silence, he fired a musket ball through one of the windows. This proved to be a fatal miscalculation. His single shot was answered instantly by a devastating, coordinated volley from within the house. The defenders, handling their arms with deadly accuracy, fired muskets loaded with slugs and balls directly into the massed ranks of the attackers. The effect was catastrophic. The great Whiteboy army, whose power was built on intimidation and surprise attacks against isolated targets, broke completely in the face of this disciplined, concentrated fire. They fled immediately and in total disarray, utterly routed by a force less than 1/30th of their size. Their lack of true military discipline had been exposed. The historical record of this event is complicated by stark contradictions in the surviving sources, particularly regarding the number of casualties. The English traveller Arthur Young, who received his information from his gentry hosts, claimed the 15 defenders killed 40 or 50 of the attackers. This massive figure is almost certainly not a simple error, but a piece of gentry counter-propaganda, intended to magnify the victory and portray the Whiteboys as cowardly and inept, thus emboldening other landowners to take a hard line. In contrast, local histories and genealogical records, which are considered far more credible, identify only 3 men by name who were killed: Patrick Butler and Michael Travers, who were left dead on the town square, and John Buggy, who was shot through the body during the fight, captured the next day by Hewitson's dragoons, and died of his wounds in custody that same night. The aftermath of the attack created 2 entirely different, irreconcilable histories. The official story, reported in establishment publications, was one of order triumphing over chaos, where heroic defenders bravely repulsed a desperate attack by villains. But in the fields and towns around Ballyragget, a very different folk memory was preserved, not in print, but in the verses of a local song. In this folk memory, the event was not a victory, but a cruel murder. The song's most bitter venom was reserved for Father Cahill, whom it branded Cursed Andy Cahill, the ruination of all, a man who had denied the Saviour. He was accused of having secretly informed on the Whiteboys to Hewitson and of siding with Nagala, the foreigners, the Protestant establishment. This created a deep and enduring chasm between the history that was written and the history that was felt. The state's response to the attack was swift and decisive. Captain Hewitson arrived with a squad of dragoons to hunt down the perpetrators, and soon 2 companies of infantry were dispatched to permanently quell the region. The battle also triggered a unified, top-down suppression from both church and state. The Catholic hierarchy, led by the Butler family's allies, moved to condemn the rebels, with Bishop Troy of Ossory pronouncing a dramatic excommunication of the Whiteboys. The Irish Parliament passed the Tumultuous Risings Act of 1775, a key part of the punitive legal framework known as the Whiteboy Code. The most significant consequence of the 1775 battle is a profound paradox. The decisive, humiliating military defeat of the largest ever Whiteboy assembly did not crush the movement in County Kilkenny. Instead, it ensured its survival. The reason for this was that the grievance was no longer just about the enclosure of common land. It was now also about the profound betrayal by the people's traditional protectors. The image of a Catholic archbishop and a detested Catholic priest organizing a state-backed militia to kill Catholic peasants in defense of a landlord's property created a deeper, more intractable wound. The martyrdom of the 3 named men fueled a desire for vengeance and, combined with the infamy of cursed Andy Cahill, entrenched the movement in the local culture for decades. The 1775 Battle of Ballyragget ultimately serves as a powerful micro-history of 18th century Ireland, exposing the deep fissures within Irish Catholicism and demonstrating unequivocally the primacy of class and property interests over religious solidarity, where a Catholic archbishop and a Protestant state could make common cause in the violent suppression of a shared enemy from the impoverished peasantry.